structure I have is introduce yourself and then let's just talk.
Okay, sounds good.
I wanna just have you start rambling and then I'm gonna pick your brain on whatever you start rambling about.
Sounds good. I could definitely ramble.
All right. All right. So welcome everyone. Welcome to Pod Local. So I have a pretty awesome guest here today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Eddie Carrillo. I am originally from the Bay Area, Milpitas. I now live in the Portland metro area. I'm a full-time mental health therapist for a hospital system out here, and I work in a partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient eating disorder program.
That's a mouthful.
It is, right?
Yeah. So what's like the this I say like what's like the primary thing you do there?
Yeah. Well, I carry a caseload of like four patients at a time. I've seen it get a little higher, but I have a caseload of four patients. So I do the individual therapy with them. I do family therapy with their support people. If it's teenagers, usually a guardian, mom or dad, whoever it is. And then if it's an adult, sometimes it's like a partner, sometimes it's also parents. It just depends on who's their biggest supports. And I also do group therapy with the two programs that we have. So in a typical day, I'll probably run like two groups. Like today, for example, I ran breakfast group for our adults, had some stuff in the middle, and then I ran the lunch group for adults in the afternoon. So uh, it can kind of change day to day, but a lot of therapy, a lot of different types of therapy, family, individual, and group, all of it.
What in your job has changed the most kind of pre-COVID and
Mhm.
post-COVID? Or we're
Yeah,
kind of in the midst of COVID. We're not
yeah,
quite through it yet.
yeah. I think for one, I mean, I actually got this job in the middle of COVID, so that's been like an adjustment in itself. From what I understand, before COVID started, the program was actually we're offsite, off out of outside of the hospital, even though we're with the hospital system. So to make it easier for the patients with eating, we used to take a shuttle from our clinic into the hospital to the cafeteria, and they would get food that way and it just make it easier so they don't have to rely on themselves to bring the food. But now with that basically being gone, we're trying to limit exposure to other people as much as possible. Patients bring their own food. We have runners who will go to and from our kitchen to like heat up the food for them and try and keep kind of people contact as small as possible. The other big thing is Zoom. It's like the video chat stuff. We have team meetings twice a week. They used to be in person. Now everything is on Microsoft Teams. We'll have the other day we went virtual because we had a snowstorm come through and everything was on Zoom. And that by itself is pretty hard to do sometimes. But yeah, just really the like logistic wise is like how the program runs and then like the use of video chat and Zoom and phone calls. They used to do phone sessions before I even started, and that by itself is extremely difficult. So
Oh yeah, I bet, especially with what you're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Um, so this is just a curiosity thing for me.
Yeah.
How often are you guys COVID tested?
You know,
Or now that or once you're vaccinated, do you guys
mhm.
still get COVID tested at all?
Yeah. I actually have gone this whole time without getting a single COVID test.
Really?
Yeah, which is,
Wow.
I don't know, is it good or is it bad? I don't really know.
Well, for me personally, I'm just like I get COVID tested whenever I have some free time, just
Yeah.
because, for me, I still work, and so, and a COVID test is really a snapshot in time
Mhm.
of where you currently are right there. So,
Yeah.
I remember when I started getting COVID tested, people I knew who stayed in the house for the entire time, during all the shutdowns and everything, they're like, "Oh, I should really get tested." And I'm like, "No, because it doesn't really work like that.
Mhm.
It's I get tested because, at least once a week because I'm, you know, out on job sites interacting with
Yeah.
people safely, of course, but I'm still
Mhm.
interacting with people, and so every week I kind of do a checkup to see if I'm still good.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of keep going. But if you've been inside for months and you've had no contact with people outside your house,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
um, but anyways,
Yeah.
so so you haven't been COVID tested.
No, not once.
Um,
It's I mean we do the most that we can as far as like
yeah,
and I know, temperature screening is not the end all be all. And I know it's not the one thing that's going to be like, okay, you're good or not to go for the day. It's really just having a program culture of like, this is what, like when people are new to the program and saying like, this is what happens if you get sick. This is what, like, this is the protocol. This is what we need to do. This is the hoops we have to jump through basically for you to be able to come back. There's a daily temperature check, and then all of our rooms have a maximum capacity of how many patients can be there. So we do that. We spread everybody out as much as possible, and everybody has masks on. And I think for the program, a lot of it was just trying to weigh the costs and the benefits of like, if we can do this as safely as possible and have in-person treatment, then we're definitely going to have the best results. Because when it goes to something like virtual, we run virtual meal groups, and while I am looking at you and I am paying attention to you while you eat, and we're talking and trying to distract you from the meal to make it as easy as possible, a patient can definitely for a split second put some food away or like toss something out of the way, and then they don't complete as much food as they need to. So the in-person treatment and just weighing the costs and the benefits, I think, has been the biggest thing. Thankfully, and now I'm fully vaccinated. I got my first shot December 27th, so that was a big Christmas present for me, just from the hospital. And then I got my second one sometime here in January, and I'm already past kind of their couple week, 3 week threshold of like, okay, now you're fully vaccinated. So
So are you a zombie yet?
no,
Because
not
you
at
got your
all.
vaccine? Not at all. No.
No.
Do you feel the microchip in you
I,
wherever you go?
my cell phone reception has gotten better.
Oh
No,
wow.
I've been all good. Yeah, I think actually the first shot I think was worse than the second one, and only because I had
Really?
like a knot in my arm for like a few days.
Oh.
But
Okay.
after that, it went away. Second shot, I know a lot of people, especially I got the Moderna one. So Moderna's
Hmm.
been kind of known to like 20% of people, second shot, you get the worst of the symptoms.
Yeah.
But I was all good. My girlfriend's fully vaccinated now. She's an optometrist here too.
Oh wow.
And she got a little bit of a fever and some body aches and stuff. But other than that, we've been good to go. And honestly, it's just a nice like sense of relief to have a vaccinated
Yeah.
household. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the whole household thing is so important because just
Mm-hmm.
getting the vaccine doesn't prevent you from being the carrier. You can
Mm-hmm.
still carry it and give it to someone else. So if your whole household is vaccinated, then that's so much better than just
Yeah.
yourself. Because yeah, you won't get sick, but you're just gonna pass it on if you get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and like for me, I work at a place that has a preschool and a
Mm-hmm.
college in it, and so I technically fall under the Santa Clara County where I live. We have our tiers,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so I fall under the current tier actually with education,
Oh.
but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because my household can't get vaccinated yet. Besides, the fact that I'll be fine and I
Mm-hmm.
can just watch my housemates suffer,
Yeah.
and just laugh at them as I go by.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
No.
Um, but and so until they can get vaccinated, it's myself being vaccinated is only kind of fixing half the issue there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so you joined during COVID. Wow, what a time to get a job like that
Best
during
time.
COVID.
Best time to find a new job. No, I was very fortunate. I think it's gonna be the same thing probably throughout my career, but just there's always a need for therapists.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of male therapists. There's not a lot of male therapists of color, and there's not a lot of male therapists that can speak another language. So just all of that put together, I'm
Do you know
very
why that
thankful.
is?
I'm not really sure. That's a good question. I mean, if I just look at like my cohort of like my master's program, like it was me and like two other guys in the class, and that was it. So I don't know if
Oh
it's
wow.
just, I mean, there's like the dumb stereotypes of like it's a like touchy feely, field. So that's why only women go into it. It's a lot of just negative connotations with it that I don't think are true at all. I think anybody can be a therapist, and I think anybody can learn to um, have empathy for other people and work through that and work through the parts of being a therapist. But I'm not really sure what it is as to why There's not a lot of us, but I'm thankful that I can, be able to find a job and look for jobs and be needed. Especially here in the Bay Area and even here in Oregon, there's large Spanish speaking populations. So to be able to serve those people is super important too.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like therapists, that's one of the markets that's kind of dominated by women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a few markets out there. A lot of the markets are male dominated,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a few markets out there that are completely female dominated, and I think therapists is one of them
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
yeah.
So that's cool that you are a person of color male therapist in your
Mm-hmm.
area, and out of all of the staff in like your department, are you like the only guy or the only guy of color there?
Yeah,
Wait, both?
yeah, both.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, wasn't expecting
Well,
that.
but only therapist, only guy therapist,
Yeah.
only person of color. The only other males in our program are two psychiatrists, and then one of our supervisors is a male therapist, former therapist. He doesn't carry a caseload or anything. So,
Mm.
as far as primary therapist with a caseload, I'm the only male, and as far as program wide, I'm the only person of color.
Oh wow,
Yeah. So
man. Well, hey, congrats because that's
I
awesome.
appreciate it. I mean, I look back at like former jobs that I've had. The last job that I had before this one, I was like, one of a few people of color. I was like one of two male therapists where we had a lot more therapists. So it's just the way it is for the field.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, still pretty great. Hopefully, it sets a
Yeah.
precedent, and
I hope
more
so.
people kind of go in, kind of change up the kind of the staff a little bit. Make
Hmm.
it you know, um, it's good to get people who speak other languages
Hmm.
into there, and people of color, and kind of just diversify it. Of course, it's good. It's good for any job there.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
but so have you noticed? Have you noticed COVID taking a serious? And this is probably an obvious. The answer is probably obvious because
Hmm.
there's a lot of talk about it. But have you noticed COVID kind of taking a hit on people's like kind of mental health or even physical health for that
Hmm.
matter? But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think at the last clinic I worked at, it was pretty general outpatient mental health. It was, and I work primarily with teenagers. So it was like kids with depression, anxiety, some thoughts of self harm, some thoughts of suicide, some substance use. And we definitely saw, from March until I was there in July, there was definitely an increase in the amount of support that a lot of our clients needed. Now, looking at specifically this eating disorder population, I think I heard something of like, these national eating disorder like helplines have seen an increase in like up to 70% of like calls that they've been getting of trying to get services for people that are experiencing symptoms of an eating disorder and full-blown eating disorders. And I
Wow.
think there's a ton to it. I mean, there's the social isolation, especially if you look at like kids, especially in teenagers, in their development, like where they are, their age range, like the people that they care most about and the people that they get their information from, the people that they connect most with are people that are their age, and that makes sense. It's, the kids are at school for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then some of them play sports or they do band or they do other extracurriculars. That's another couple hours a day that they're at school, and they're spending all this time with people their age, and then they go home and see mom and dad or siblings or other guardians, and that's only a small portion of their day, but the biggest part of their day is people their age. So when you take out that social aspect of it, when you start to kind of isolate people, then you start to put people in front of a screen for a lot more than they're used to, whether it's
Hmm.
on their phone on social media, whether it's on their computer for entertainment, like Netflix, Hulu, whatever it is to kill the time in between. And now for school, like they're in front of the computer a lot of the time for school, and now some people for work. Like it's a lot of time in front of a screen. It's a lot of time physically away from people, and it's a lot of time in the same place. Like some people don't leave their house for how many days at a time, and they're just in one spot for a long
Sometimes
time.
months.
Months, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, some people who haven't been able to leave the house, who've had to resort to you know delivery of groceries or delivery of other things to keep themselves safe, all for good reason. But they're really just in one spot for a lot more than they're used to.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing I've noticed with people I know is, you have a lot more time to watch Hulu and Netflix, like you said,
Mhm. Yeah.
but then it starts this weird chain reaction where you watch a show, and normally when you watch a show, you don't really perceive that as reality because you
Hmm.
go out and you experience reality.
Yeah.
But now you're watching a show, and you're no longer experiencing reality,
Hmm.
and that becomes reality. And so a perfect example is when the show 13 Reasons Why came out,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
like depression among teens just spiked like crazy because that was a really depressing show.
Yeah.
Um, and if a show like that were to come out right now, I can't even imagine what it would do because a lot
Yeah.
of it was alleviated a lot because people would go out, they'd see their friends, they'd be social, which
Hmm.
and what and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. That does a lot for your mental health. That does a lot
Yeah.
for your mood and how you feel is when you're around people. Humans are
Yeah.
very social creatures,
Hmm.
and so we're kind of being taken out of our natural habitat right now, which is
Yeah.
just so interesting.
Hmm.
Just kind of the effect it's had on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so what? How do you treat this? Like, how do you help
Mhm.
it?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Man. It's hard. I think there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, there could be one, and I mean it's now just adding something to do on the computer. But if it's especially for adults, like trying to find, maybe now is the time to find a therapist, because now while it's harder to get out of the house, you're now open to like a wide array of therapists who can offer
Mm-hmm.
like virtual treatment. Like now you can, if you live, let's just take Portland area for example. If you live 2 hours away from Portland, before you wouldn't want to see a therapist in Portland, even though there's a bunch more in Portland than where you live. But now you have access to some of those therapists who have a different expertise, different set of experiences, because you can see them virtually. So one thing possible could be getting your own treatment and getting your own services. I think another thing is trying to come up with ways to connect with other people, though it might also be virtually, but trying to do those things. Like I know in the beginning of quarantine, friends reaching out and doing like virtual happy hour, or just like getting together on a Zoom call, a bunch of people who haven't seen each other for a while, and just spending time together. Whether it's trying to get outside and just be out in the open, whether it's for light exercise or just being outside to take in, the vitamin D and all that good stuff that the sun and just outside can provide. That's also helpful too. I know in some areas gyms are opening up, or gyms have kind of transitioned to having things available outside so you can work out a little more safely outside, just trying to engage in exercise. Also trying to fix sleep schedules. I know sleep schedules for one have just kind of gone out the window for a lot of people because you're home all the time. So it's like you can nap during the day, you can nap right after you wake up, after you eat breakfast. So trying to have a consistent sleep schedule is really important to having and improving your mental health. The four pillars that a lot of people talk about are exercise, stress management, sleep, and just improved diet. So just improved foods that you're eating, trying to hit all the food groups and the macronutrients and helping yourself out. Those are four kind of smaller, simpler things to do that can help your mental health for sure.
That actually, what's funny about that is I kind of did like all of those things you said.
Mm-hmm.
I started like I changed my diet. I started getting
Yeah.
more exercise. I started being outside more, trying to go on hikes and all that. And you're not lying. It makes a huge difference. It
Yeah.
makes like a really huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I remember when I started working out and I changed my diet, and those are the only things I did.
Yeah.
Um, then that by itself just weirdly just made a huge difference. And then
Yeah.
I started being outside more. I started. I've always actually had a relatively good sleep schedule because I
Mm-hmm.
work a lot, and so I usually spend pretty much the whole day working. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, I usually go to sleep around midnight, maybe one
Yeah.
o'clock. Um, I sleep until like 8.
Till it's time. Yeah.
Yep, it's that
Yeah.
that's it. It's I sleep until like 8, and it's every now and then I'll take a nap during the day, but
Mm-hmm.
mostly not. Most of the time I don't.
Yeah.
And I sleep from midnight to like 7 or 8, every day.
Yeah. That's good. I
um,
mean, routine is huge. I think even for people who work from home, trying to build in like a work routine of like waking up, maybe not necessarily like showering if you're not like a morning shower person, but like getting up, getting dressed, doing your small commute, where they got to go to the kitchen and like get your coffee or your breakfast, but then going to wherever your workstation is and like having that as like, this is my designated work time and workstation. And when I'm out of this, like I'm not working and I'm not worrying about work, and just trying to have like some resemblance of a routine is also huge.
That is completely true. Actually, you know what's funny is I don't have experience in any of this stuff.
Mhm.
When COVID first hit in March, when everything locked down in
Yeah.
California, um, I had about a month or two where I stayed home, didn't go to work,
Mhm.
and everything. But and that's because no one knew what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
But once we kind of figured out what was going on a little bit, um, then I started, my work kind of eased me back into it.
Mhm.
And then, for a long time, I've been back, working every day for, you know, just normally pretty much.
Yeah.
So the only thing for me that's not normal anymore is the fact that I wear a mask in public,
Yeah.
which is I got used to it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I
Agreed.
know, I know, I know a lot of people who are just like, I hate wearing masks. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's hard to breathe. You can't hear me talk. And I just think they're complete babies.
Yeah.
um,
I think what it more is people don't like to be told what to do.
yeah, that's a
And
huge
it's
part of it.
and
You
it's
know,
like if someone's gonna tell me, then nah.
I literally
Yeah.
I know someone who he's against masks literally just because he's being forced to wear it. He doesn't mind
Yeah.
wearing the mask. He doesn't like the government telling him what to do. And I see his point, but right now just wear a mask. Just wear the dang mask.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, that's a whole nother thing. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the only thing that's not normal for me is the mask thing, and then I don't go out anymore.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
one of my one of my best friends is one of my coworkers, so
Mhm.
I still see him.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a single man, so it's I don't have a girlfriend to see, and if
Mhm.
I did, I'd probably force her into my social bubble somehow.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I'm not going out to bars. I'm not going out to restaurants, and I think in the past year I've been to like two wineries and like three restaurants in like the past
Yeah.
year. It's all been outside, um, which I'm totally fine with.
Yeah.
I actually very much like eating at a restaurant outside, just
Mhm.
not when it's cold.
Yeah. No.
I don't care how many heaters you put out there.
No,
Once
there's
that
not
cold breeze
enough.
comes in, it's cold.
Yeah. I think too, I don't know, I didn't like going to restaurants that much anyway, but like now, like just the whole takeout and like takeout from restaurants, and like my girlfriend and I like to support, local business at least once a week and get takeout. And it's like
Yeah.
that has been like so much better because I can just come home and just be home, and like I don't have to worry about, the service and waiting for this and waiting for that, and two tables down is too loud and they're talking too much, and I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. Like it's just, you can just be home.
Yeah. I actually liked going out to restaurants and
Mm.
kind of trying out different places and all that. But
Mm.
what's funny is as soon as COVID hit, I was just like, all right, cool. No more. I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
good.
it's not a big change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I feel
I'm
you.
fine with it. And then outdoor dining opened up in the summer, which was in the summer. It was nice. It was
Yeah.
pretty warm. Actually, this was a very hot summer in California.
Yeah. Mhm.
Extremely. We had some of the most intense heat waves I've ever felt.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man.
but um, yeah, it's and I like a couple times in the summer I went out and ate outside and it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but at the same time, I don't like to gloat too much about how normal my life seems because there's a lot of people who their life is not normal. They
Yeah.
lost loved ones.
Hmm.
They're in the hospital themselves. I know tons of people who are hospitalized
Hmm.
or if they weren't hospitalized, they're miserable at home. And actually the interesting thing is I actually think I had COVID, but like December or January or December 2019 or
2019.
January
Yeah.
2020 before
Hmm.
it really became a thing. Because I remember Um, I can't remember exactly what month it was, but I got super super sick. Like couldn't get out of
Mhm.
bed. Body. I had all the COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, but it lasted like 2 or 3 days, and that was it.
Mm.
And so, uh, last time I checked, scientists weren't sure if you could get COVID twice or not.
Yeah.
If you could get the same
Yeah.
strand of COVID twice.
Mhm.
And so my thought was, it's just like, I've been totally like healthy this whole time. Like, did I just already
Mhm.
get it?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
but now there's new strands, so it's I have to start being careful again. I'm just kidding. I was
Yeah.
always careful, but
Yeah, it feels like it's, I mean, I'm hopeful, but yeah, sometimes it feels like it's a new, we kind of, the lights at, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we keep getting pushed back another 20, 30 feet. So it's
yeah, yeah. I remember in summer it started to feel like, oh, things are like starting to go back to normal.
mhm.
Or at least what our new normal will be, and that's like totally okay. And
Yeah.
then winter hit, and it was like, oh, all right, all bets are off. We're
Yeah.
done. Like
Yeah.
everyone, we almost went back to like a complete and total lockdown.
Hmm.
Um, at least here in Santa Clara, and we're still fairly locked down here. We have outdoor
Yeah.
dining. Um, gyms are still closed. Churches are still closed in Santa Clara. That's actually
Hmm.
been a real hot topic. It's been
Topic. Yeah.
super super political. It's been because the Supreme Court said, "Hey, churches can open." Santa Clara was just like, "Yeah, no thanks,"
Yeah.
and they're just like, "No, we're the Supreme Court," and they're like, "Yeah, we know, just no thanks." And then a
Yeah.
federal judge was just like, "No, no, 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 no. Like you need to listen." And they're like,
Mhm.
"Fine, but we're gonna fight you on that."
Yeah.
And so it's just churches remain closed. Um, they're really trying to get schools open right now. Actually, hey, that's
Yeah.
something you
Yeah.
might be able to shed some light on. You did mention schools, so
Hmm.
there is an obvious health risk if you open up schools, especially right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um, like it could potentially be pretty dangerous to open up
Hmm.
schools. On the
Hmm.
flip side, kids' mental health is suffering,
Hmm.
and like you said, depression rates, suicide rates, they're going up.
Hmm.
The services needed for those kids are going up,
Yeah.
and so where do you find
What
that
do we
line?
do?
Where do
Yeah.
you find the trade off? It's like
Hmm.
at what point do you say, um, the mental health implications are too much to not
Hmm.
have schools open. We need
Yeah.
to open them. Or do you say, hey, just give it one more year. In the grand
Hmm.
scheme of things, it's not that long.
Yeah.
But that way we can make sure that you, your teacher, and your parents are alive for the next 20, 40, whatever.
Yeah.
Where's the line? How
Yeah. That's hard.
it is.
I
It
think,
really is.
yeah,
And the problem is people like politicians are making these
yeah,
choices. Politicians are not mental health experts, and they are also
yeah,
not health experts,
yeah.
and
They're
they're the
also
ones
not
making the
teachers. They're
decisions.
not,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
they're not
not
the ones that,
teachers. They're
hmm,
not kids. They're not well, they probably are parents, but
yeah.
um, and they're the people making the decisions. But from your point of view, as
Hmm.
someone who knows mental health, like at what point would you be like, okay, we should probably open schools because this is
Yeah.
bad?
I, with all the teacher friends I have and just teachers in my life, I think I just have a hard time saying it's time for people to go back to school unless teachers are fully equipped and taken care of for them to feel comfortable enough for students to be back. Um, I think there's a number of things that families and parents can do to try and help uh like a child that's struggling with their mental health. But I think, I mean, it's become so politicized. Like this whole thing has been so politicized, right? So
I
it's
know.
hard to be able to say one thing or the other without it like going, on one side of the aisle or whatever you want to call it. But I have a hard time saying that people should go back to school just because of one thing, or without making sure that teachers are ready for it, and schools are ready for that kind of demand. I think back to right before schools closed down here in Oregon. And I remember thinking it was a Friday. I had gone with one of my coworkers to go pick up one of our clients from school. And, we were just hearing about COVID, this and that. I mean, we heard about it for about a month and a half or 2 months, whatever, but we're really not sure what's happening. And then one day, it's okay. Now, next week, the kids are off and it's the week before spring break. So now they have 2 weeks off from school. We could figure this out. And just remembering like how many kids were in the school and walking around like no mask, nothing, and just thinking like I can't imagine school going back to that without a lot of changes and precautions taking place. I myself get, I don't want to say upset, but I have a hard time when parents or certain people will go and turn to like, well, what about my kid's mental health? It's the same parents that like really didn't care about their kids' mental health before all of this happened. So like I understand like now you care because you're seeing it daily, but I just need you to remember, I mean, this has been something that's been needing attention for a long time. So for me, it's a hard time. It's hard for me to hear like now I want something to be done when it's like something should have been done a long time ago. Um, yeah, I think
A real
it's
quick
yeah,
point on that.
yeah,
It's the baby boomer generation. They were actually like it was a social precedent that if you had therapy, you were weak. There's something
mm-hmm,
wrong with you.
yeah,
In my opinion, every living person should go to therapy every now and then. It's like
yeah,
tuning up your car. Just because your car
mm-hmm,
runs doesn't mean it doesn't need a tune up. You know,
yeah, yeah.
everyone should get therapy, but the baby boomer generation, I'm putting baby in front of it specifically because I don't, yeah, I don't want someone to be like, oh, you can't call us boomers and
Yeah.
whatever. They were raised to think that if you got therapy, you were weak.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's something wrong with you, and then that translated into how they raise their kids.
Hmm.
And so they never, they're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with my kid. They don't need therapy. Um, and they would just not really pay attention to a lot of this
Hmm.
stuff. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, when I have kids, it's like, every 6 months, it's just up. Let's just go check in. I
Okay.
know you're fine,
Yeah.
but just do a check in and
Hmm.
just like a little tune up.
Yeah.
Um, and I wish I did that as a kid, and I do that now.
Yeah.
I do that myself now,
Hmm.
and it helps. It's for one, you don't know what you don't know. So there might be
Yeah.
something somewhat mentally destructive that you're doing that you don't realize until someone points it out to you.
Hmm.
But also it's just healthy to, like just because you feel good doesn't mean you can't feel better.
Yeah.
But um that that's a good point that you said, like a lot of the parents saying like I need to put my kids back in school because, of their mental health. It's like that there's a lot that a parent can do about a
Hmm.
child's mental health.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, what would be like the first thing you would tell the parent if they came to you with that question?
Yeah.
Besides, this is something you should have thought of a long time ago.
Yeah. I think it's trying to come up with like, okay, so like what is like a day-to-day look like? What kind of support is the child getting? What kind of interaction are they getting from the family? What are some routines you have? I think for some kids, for some parents, it's easier to just say like, here's the iPad, like please leave me alone, like be in the living room, you know what I mean? But like
Hmm.
what routines do we have in place? What things are we doing to help support this kid? Like do we have them on a sleep schedule? Do we have them eating at regular or typical times? Do we have time where we can just take a break from all the screens and take a break from the Zoom class, take a break from the video games with your friends, so where we can just be together, whether it's inside or outside? It's winter time here in Oregon, so it's not always the best time to be outside, but just being together somewhere, and trying to do little things like that, I think can help a ton. For some parents, what I've seen is where it ends up being like, well, something's wrong. This is somebody else's responsibility. I need somebody else to fix this. And really, I mean, I've had so many parents come in and say, like, basically fix my kid. It's like, well, I can do whatever I can. And anytime your kid comes in, they can come to therapy and everything will be pretty okay. But the thing is, like, they still spend X amount of hours with you during the week. Like they leave like my office, like they don't live with me, thankfully. They don't like stay in my office for an extended period of time. They're here for an hour to 2 hours a week. they still have to be with you. So like we need to figure out a way that you can interact with them in the best way possible. And even some of the kids and or older teenagers, they can try to find ways to where they can interact better with their family. And like what can we do to create like a supportive family unit at home? Because you guys are what you have.
Circling back to what I just kind of started thinking about schools
Mhm.
opening up, and you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's like a lot of changes. Did you, when you lived in Milpitas, did you go to Milpitas High?
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember how many kids were like jam packed into that
Yeah.
high school, right?
Yes. I still have my like class t-shirt, and on the back just seeing like how many people were on it. And sometimes like that ends up being a discussion, like when I first moved to Oregon and like meeting people in college and talking about like our high school experience, and people like I met people who like went to a high school with like 130 people, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like
What is
the
that like?
PE periods, yeah, like the PE periods used to have like I don't know, like 200 kids in them or something, like something crazy. Like I can't imagine that's your whole school. So yeah, to think back, like how many people were just walking through Milpitas High and like thinking like, how do we get back to that now? Like it's gonna be some time.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, I can't help but think of, remember the rallies where
Yeah.
every
Mhm.
student would pack into the gym. Well, actually, I think they had
Yeah.
to split it in half.
Yeah.
And
The
so
two
half the
rally
school,
periods. Yeah.
yeah, because it was there's so many students there,
It's
but
too many.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, can you imagine if they tried to do that right now?
I
Sheesh.
I have
You were literally your arm was touching
yeah.
the person next to you and you didn't even know who they were.
Yeah, no, seriously. I
Sometimes.
mean, I have a cousin now that's a senior at Milpitas High. Is like, I can't imagine like them, because right now in Oregon, a lot of schools are trying to like they've already set dates for like next month or in a couple weeks or whatever. Like, this is when we're going to try to start, a hybrid 1 day, 2 day, 3 day a week of in person. And I just can't imagine what that would look like in San Jose or Milpitas. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's I know there are talks of sending kids back to school and all that. I have no idea what that's going to look like. Every
Yeah.
school is so full.
Hmm.
And actually
Pastful.
yeah,
Like
seriously.
over, yeah.
What's interesting, they just opened up their second high school campus, or they opened it up recently.
Hmm.
And so, but it's like a program based high school campus.
Oh, okay.
Um, but it's more space for high schoolers, and so
Hmm.
that'll help, but it's not gonna fix the problem.
Not
Um,
enough. Yeah.
so kind of going back to my last question there.
Hmm.
So it sounds like you're kind of on the end of like, let's keep schools closed until it's safe.
Yeah.
And coming from you, that carries some weight to it,
Hmm.
because you're the expert here, and I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah.
The politicians making the rules are not an expert on this.
Hmm.
Frank from Facebook is not an expert on this. um, I you know I don't know why people listen to random people who think you're wrong on
Yeah.
Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead and trust the professionals on this, but
Yeah.
coming from you, that holds some weight.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, I'm not going to generalize. And I don't think you're generalizing either. For the most part, you're probably right, but there are probably certain cases where other actions have to be taken.
Yeah.
I don't know everyone's personal situation. I'm
Hmm.
speaking about kind of just in general, your average person. Um, some people really really might not be able to learn on Zoom. Like it
Hmm.
just can't happen. It's
Yeah.
um, and some students might be thriving right now.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
everyone is way different. It's me personally. I used to be an extrovert. I'm an introvert, but I like extrovert activities.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's not it's normal at all.
Yeah.
um, so I love being by myself. I love working by myself. I love just relaxing by myself. But every now and then, I just feel like I need to be around other people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will just like my energy levels will tank if I'm not around other people. But
Mm.
if I'm around other people, in groups of people or whatever for too long, then I just like start wanting to leave, and
Mm.
I'll find
Yeah.
an excuse to leave. But so for the most part, if I were in high school right now, I'd be loving this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my friends and I sometimes will go back and forth and just thinking like what this would be like if we were, seniors in college or if we were seniors in high school right now. And I don't know how I'd react. I think, especially like, playing sports and thinking like my sports got canceled. Like now at my age, like, oh yeah, I think I'd handle it fine. But like, I don't know if a 17-year-old version of myself would have handled it okay. Like, I don't know if a 16-year-old version of myself would have been okay with this. And it's such a there's no preparation for anything like this. So I think the important thing is to try to like be as open-minded and mindful of like what options we have and trying to really like you said, I mean, I'm sure there are some kids who are thriving and I'm sure there's some kids who are really having a hard time and need something better. So it's like trying to like decide like, okay, what can we do for this smaller number of people to help them out as much as possible, and the people who are pretty normal or pretty average, letting them try to continue for as long as possible.
And uh, I I'm not sure about Oregon. Never. I've only been there once, but not recently. But
Mm-hmm.
in Milpitas, the school system here is actually really good at individual students' needs,
Mm.
which is good. So I know
Yeah,
I know Milpitas. They're gonna figure it out. They're gonna be okay.
yeah.
We have an amazing school board. We have an amazing superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna figure it out. But yeah, one thing I said in my last podcast is
Mm-hmm.
what a year for this to happen. If this
Yeah,
happened 10 years ago when there was no Zoom, you know,
I don't
it,
know.
it's like, I mean, I guess YouTube was around back then. And you could record a
Yeah.
video, post it up, and email it out.
Mm-hmm.
But if this happened 10 years ago, you wouldn't have, Zoom for, schooling, where you're
Yeah.
basically in a virtual classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Churches wouldn't be able to live stream their service
Yeah.
right to the computer in your pocket.
Yeah.
um, so I was just saying, like, if there's any year this was gonna happen, what a year. This is the
Yeah.
perfect year. The only other better year would be maybe 10 years from now when technology is
Mm-hmm.
even better.
Even better.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's that's a silver lining is this didn't happen 10, 15 years ago, because whatever you're worried about right now, whether it's mental health, whether it's your education, whether it's your business, whether it's whatever, it is better that it's happening now instead of 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
I think
is
there's a lot of truth in that.
oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
um so what are the kind of like main things you've been seeing popping up, like the spikes?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, like what are the main spikes?
Yeah.
And like and if or if you can say, or if what ages is this hitting?
I want to say all, but I think the biggest, I think would have to be teenagers. I think there has been there was even an article, I had a family member send it to me, from like one of the Bay Area news articles that talked about just the spike in eating disorders amongst teenagers. So I know that has been a huge one. I mean, if you take a eating disorders can kind of manifest at any time for people who are predisposed to them and who have like there's a genetic component to it too that plays a big piece. But what I've seen a lot is how many patients will come in and I get their initial eval and I'll read through it, and it talks about how the COVID pandemic has impacted them and basically put them in the position where they are today. There's a lot of people who, for better or for worse, they decide it can start off as something small, like, oh, I want to get in shape or I want to eat healthier. But then it starts to turn into like, okay, like now I'm working out this many times a week for this long. And like now it's starting to turn into a more like obsessive thing and a more, it's just taking over more and more. And then you get the pandemic where, okay, now gyms are closed. I've had a patient like this where gyms closed and now I need to be able to control this in another way. So now I'm going to restrict my eating and now I'm not going to eat very much during the day. And now I'm going to do at home exercises, or I'm going to go this many days without eating a full meal, or I'm just going to kind of eat enough to keep me going, which is not enough. And then now I'm going to exercise too, and I'm really going to be in a calorie deficit. So that's one thing I've seen a lot of. I think too, symptoms and rates of depression and anxiety have increased a lot. One of the big symptoms of depression is like isolation and looking for people who are isolating a lot. Well, if you're going to take away everything and make them isolate kind of on purpose because now they have to just be in their room all day and doing homework and doing all that kind of stuff, that's really going to add to it. Especially with now and two, looking at like rates like anxiety, where anxiety, a lot of it is the fear of the unknown. Now you have this huge pandemic where we really don't know what's going to happen next week or in a couple weeks or next month. So now that's an overarching fear of the unknown that's just on everybody's mind. So I think those are probably some of the biggest things that I've seen kind of shoot up is, symptoms of depression, rates of depression and anxiety. And I know for a fact eating disorders, because we have a wait list for our program that's very long amongst teenagers just waiting to get in. It's gotten to the point, unfortunately, where people will get evaluated for the program in November, end of October, November, and they're just now being accepted and admitting
Wow.
in February. And that's hard. That's hard for someone to try to manage an eating disorder on their own when it is something that needs to be managed by either some type of doctor, whether it's a pediatrician or a primary care physician, a dietitian, and some type of therapist to help with that whole, distress that comes from eating.
Well, have you guys been able to add more patients if things are with the virtual things that you do? Because you
We've,
could potentially have like 50 people in one Zoom call. I know that's
yeah.
not manageable for one therapy. I
Yeah.
know I know that, but
Yeah.
instead of sitting down with 3 people or something, you could potentially
Mhm.
get on a Zoom call with 8.
Yeah.
Potentially
We've
double it or
stayed, yeah, we've stayed pretty consistent with the numbers since I've been there, since I got there in July. So it's been something like, 5 to 6 teenagers in one group with another 5 to 6 in the other teenage group. And then adults range from, the lowest I've seen at a time, like 3 or 4 to up to like 7 or 8. So we've really stayed to about 20 patients total for the program, which I don't know what it's like full capacity when things are quote normal, but 20 has been pretty consistent this whole time.
so for the people on the wait list, is it possible that um, you guys could maybe make like a series of like 5 videos or something, or
Mm,
like start like a blog? I mean, it's not going to fix the issue by any
yeah,
means, but it
yeah.
something that would be better than nothing for the people who are
Mhm.
kind of on the wait list. Is that something you guys have thought about?
It hasn't been something that I've seen implemented or thought about. I think the biggest thing that they'll do next is like, okay, what's the next best thing? Because eating disorders should be monitored pretty closely because of
Mm-hmm.
things like, your heart rate dropping too much or, your vital signs not being within normal range. We really push for some type of monitoring, whether it's with your primary care physician weekly, trying to find a therapist while you wait, that kind of thing. The unfortunate part to it too has been I've seen a number of patients who will start on the wait list and they end up being able to jump everybody because they end up in the hospital. And then once you end up in the hospital and you're there for medical stabilization, your discharge plan ends up being you come to our program. And it's like, well, I got evaluated in November and I was waiting, but then I ended up in the hospital. So now I'm here sooner because of all of that. So there's no perfect answer to it. It's been definitely difficult for the evaluators to tell someone like, well, that's just where we're at, and these are the resources, these are the people we can connect to with now. But it really just turns into a waiting game.
So if an eating disorder also has genetics, built into it, or
Mhm.
genetics is a factor of eating disorders. Um, what are there like signs, that that's where you're headed, or are there like
Mm-hmm.
preventative things that you can do if you think you might be starting something,
Mm-hmm.
something that you can kind of nip it in the bud as soon as you notice it starting? Are there certain things
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as far as like genetics, there's right now from the research that I've seen, like there's no like if we find this gene or in your your DNA makeup, whatever, like you're gonna have an eating disorder. There's nothing I've seen yet
Mm-hmm.
for that. But some big things that we see are people who are perfectionists, people who always need to have everything like in line and done correctly, people who are very motivated by pleasing other people. We've seen that as something, to really look out for.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I've had patients who are just like, I know that I have a hard time eating, but right now I'm doing it because I know I need to do it so that, my parents are happy, or that my boyfriend isn't as worried, or my girlfriend isn't as worried. So it's really just, having those kind of tendencies we see a lot play out sometimes with people with eating disorders. Also the high achievers, the people who like, once they set their mind to something, like that's it, like they're getting it done, which in a lot of times, like that's such a good quality to have, like being perfectionists or trying to strive for perfection, right? That leads to success in school or in college, or whatever job you end up doing in a trade, or when you're an adult. But when it's an eating disorder, then it's like you get these very rigid black and white rules and rituals that they follow when it comes to eating. Same with people pleasing. I mean, that's not a terrible characteristic to have, right? You care about other people, you want to make sure they're okay. But when it comes to the fact that it's getting in the way of your own health, then it turns into an issue. When you're a high achiever, again, not a bad characteristic to have. But then when it turns into like, now I need to have the same qualities when it comes to what kinds of food I'm eating or how much I'm exercising in a week, those kinds of things, then it turns into an issue.
My gosh, you're scaring me because you just listed off a few of my traits.
I think the big thing is those are all. I don't know the percentage, and I can't do it. I'm not gonna make up a number off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
eating disorders impact I think a single digit, maybe double digits now, but like a single digit percentage of the population, right? So the good thing is, for most people, those things will not manifest into an eating disorder. But I think for things to look out for is when it starts to turn into they start to again isolate a lot more, right? You start to notice for people with like binge eating disorder, we see a lot of like teens and adults with this. You start to notice like large quantities of food missing. You start to see that your teenager really they want to take a big piece into cooking now out of nowhere. And it's like, well, why do you want to do that? And you start to notice like, oh, they don't use like butter. They try to avoid using oil, things like that. They want to have a big part in making the meal because they want to control how many calories are in the meal. You start to notice that, they're not finishing dinner every night. And what used to be their favorite meal or dessert is now a no-go. Like they don't want anything to do with that anymore. So just trying to notice things like that in a person can really help to identify if it's symptoms of an eating disorder.
Well, I think it's like there's a balance to that too, because
Mm-hmm.
things like slimming down on butter,
Yeah.
maybe not eating a dessert every night, or
Yeah.
are probably pretty good healthy choices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if it's like a compulsive thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, I cannot have dessert.
And
It's I
obsessive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm on a diet right now, but it is a very lax diet. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically I set a diet for myself just to break my habit of eating fast food a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I before COVID I worked about 100 to 110 hours a week. Um, yeah, I work a lot.
Yeah.
I still work probably
But
anywhere from 80 to 100 hours a week, depending on the week and what's
yeah.
going on. Um, and I used to eat a ton of fast food,
Mm-hmm.
um, just because that's all I had time for.
Yeah.
I had time to it's like I'd have 30 minutes to eat lunch, and so near one of my jobs, there's a Taco Bell right across the street, so I just run over to
Yeah.
Taco Bell, grab that, come back and eat.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I went on my diet, it was solely to break my fast food habit. And
Yeah.
so now I shop a lot more, and I've always eaten a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've always just had huge portions. My running joke was, how much food do I need? Look for the package that says family size. That's for me. Um, and
Yeah.
that's just always been me.
Yeah.
Um, but my diet now is very loose.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started it, it was pretty strict because it's habit breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was a lot of protein, a lot of carbs. I started working out at the same time, so it's
Yeah.
or more of the good carbs, less of the fatty carbs, a lot of the energy
Mm-hmm.
carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. I started the diet because I was I was tired all the time,
Mm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
was I was constantly drinking Red Bull and coffee, and
Yeah.
I was always tired, and part of that was working 100 215 hours a week,
Yeah.
that kind of had a little bit to do with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
um, but part of it was also I was just eating like crap for the most part,
Mhm.
just all the
Mhm.
time. I was just eating terribly, and so I once I fixed my diet, I was strict for like a couple months, and then after that I was pretty laxed. But when I would tell people I'm on a diet, everyone was just like, "Are you crazy? If you get any lighter, you're gonna float away."
Yeah.
Because I'm a small dude. I'm 5'8".
Mhm.
I'm like 135 pounds. I'm a
Mhm.
small dude. I'm small. And so people around me who were like 6 foot would be like, you're going on a diet? Are you serious? And
Mhm.
um, but people don't really understand, like it was more to break a habit than it was to start eating better.
Yeah.
My diet wasn't for, well, it was for health reasons, but it wasn't like
Mhm.
because like I need to lose weight. It was just like, no, I need to like start eating better so I can have more energy throughout the day.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that once I got on my new diet, I started cooking more. I started having more like steak and chicken instead of
Mhm.
a hamburger or a burrito.
Yeah.
From fast food. It actually made me feel better too.
Yeah.
Emotionally
Mhm.
feel better.
Yeah.
So I had more energy, and I was overall just like less like mopey.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I've actually struggled with anxiety and depression for years.
Mhm.
Um, and it took a traumatic event in my life for me to actually start going to therapy. And
Mhm.
what happened is I witnessed someone get murdered. Um,
Oh
yeah,
shit.
it was like
Yeah.
15 feet away from me.
Yeah.
It was a shooting that happened right in front of me, and that kind of set me over the edge. I started having nightmares. I started being afraid of. It happened at about 10 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
near Burger King, and so it's like every time I'd go around that area, it was like PTSD, and
Yeah.
I didn't really want to go out at night anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and so that kind of set me over the edge, and so I'm just like, all right, it's probably find a therapist and
Yeah.
get some therapy now. And so um, now that I've done that, it's like, oh wow, like this is great. Like not
Yeah.
just for, it's like I feel like I got over my PTSD from that event, but
Yeah.
I'm still gonna go just because it's great. If anything, it's an unbiased, impartial person to talk to and kind of hash things out with. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I was debating for a while. It's like, oh, should I move? Should I move out of the area? And
Mhm.
um like, what would that mean for me? Like, do I need to, or do I just want to? Because I felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I talked about. I'm just like, hey, I've been thinking about moving out of the area, um because I feel like that's the only way I can get out of this rut. Like, what do you think?
Mhm.
And then I got some really good advice. And so
Yeah.
if
Good
and a
insight.
lot of the yeah and a lot of the time insurance covers your therapy. And so
Thankfully,
you
yeah.
yeah and so you don't have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars that you probably don't have.
Mhm.
um well, I'm speaking to some of the people who have been financially hit by COVID and just like, I
Yeah.
can't afford therapy, because that's one of the main arguments for not getting therapy, is just like, it's too
The
expensive, can't
price.
afford it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But a lot of insurance companies cover at least a good portion of your therapy. Um, and so yeah, if anything, even if you feel like nothing's wrong, it's just kind of a good impartial, unbiased person to talk to,
Yeah.
just about things going on, and
Mhm.
um,
100% agree.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty great.
I think
But yeah,
sometimes people will get stuck with like thinking that like um if I go see a therapist once, that's it, and like I can't ever go again. And I'm glad you bring up the point of like it's totally fine to go again. I mean, I use the analogy of like, you don't get like a punch card to where like you can only come the one time, and once you punch the card, like you can never come see a therapist again. Like
is that a
pediatricians and
thing?
primary care, no, not at all. Like people
Well,
like,
do people think that?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I get clients before my last job thinking like, when they're ready to discharge, thinking like, well, I guess that's it. And I'm like, no, like, come back whenever you feel you need it. I saw a
Oh wow.
therapist for a while too, and she told me like, this isn't over. Like, you can text me whenever you need to get scheduled again. You can come see me whenever you need to. And for me, I'm like, that's a huge reassurance. But so, yeah, some people feel like that's it. Like they only get one treatment episode. And like, no, like you can. There's no limit. You can come as much as you need to. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that was actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I like, even if I feel like nothing's wrong, I go back once every 6 months.
Yeah.
Just as a tune-up, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My mental car broke down and I got it fixed, and it made me
Yeah.
realize like, oh, I need to take care of this thing. You know, it's
Yeah.
your emotions is, and you know, you we'll just say your brain, that it's something that's that's a muscle that needs taking care take to be taken
Yeah.
care of too. You need to take care of it, you know. um I remember I used to be really into Jordans and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and I'm just like, you know, have you ever thought about how ridiculous it is that, you know, we spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on shoes? And he was just like, well, you got to take care of your feet, man. And I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
And you know, the same thing could be said here. It's like, yeah, you know, therapy might be expensive, but for one, you have insurance, but two, it's like you got to take care of yourself. You know,
Yeah.
take care of yourself. And I just think that's a huge thing that I wish I had like the money to do like an information campaign about saying like, hey, go to therapy. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with it.
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
like just like you take your car into the shop to get your spark plugs changed, you should take yourself into the shop to get your
Yeah.
brain tuned up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, I wish that was more well known, and I also wish the stubborn people who think that um, therapy is only for people who have something wrong with them. I also wish
Yeah.
they would have a change of heart on that,
Yeah.
because some of those people need it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is, I mean, either you're proactive and you try to take care of your mental health, or your body's going to let you know like when you need some help quickly, and almost in like an emergency like situation. You
Yeah.
can push it off as much as you want. You can tell yourself you're okay, and you can, keep pushing it down, but eventually it's gonna come out. It's gonna manifest in one way or another.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't understand is, if you have some like trauma or some things going on mentally that you really should talk to a therapist about, it's not, people are just like, you know what, but it's okay. I don't mind dealing with this. You know, I don't mind
Yeah.
just suffering a bit. But what people don't understand is, you're not the only one suffering.
Mhm.
It's your friends, it's your siblings, it's your girlfriend, it's your wife, it's your parents, it's your kids. You know, they suffer with you at no
Yeah.
fault of their own,
Mhm.
because of what you could be
Very
going
true.
through.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's almost like, if you have people who are close to you or depend on you, it's almost like you owe it to them to work on yourself. Because anyone whose life could be impacted by you like mentally caving in on yourself. Um, you know, it's like, I know someone who, his dad is a he definitely, he's got some stuff that he needs to work out. And every now and then he'll just lash out
Yeah.
randomly for like no good reason. Um, you know, there, he also has some other issues, but I'm not gonna dive too deep into that.
Yeah.
But like, it could all be solved with just like talking to a professional,
And some
and you know, just
support.
like you know, getting some support, yeah, and just hashing
Mhm.
out his issues. And you know, he is of the baby boomer generation that grew up thinking like, oh, you know, therapy's for the weak. And you know, that
Not
it's
true.
people, exactly not true,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
I really wish people would kind of see the light a little bit more there. So what's the road look like from here on out? You know,
with COVID and everything.
with COVID, you know, with
Yeah.
people dealing with it, you know, some people are starting to get vaccinated, and
Hmm.
you know, things are looking good. Not good. Things are still pretty bad. Things are looking like they're going
Better.
to get better
Yeah.
for the first time in a year.
A year.
You know,
Yeah.
we've been dealing with this since you know, before March, but we've been really dealing with it since March.
Yeah.
You know, like where do you see this going? You know, in your
Yeah.
field, in your
Hmm.
field, you know, and
Yeah.
do you
I
see do you like sorry, I'll let you answer just a sec.
No, you're
Do
good.
you do you think you have something positive to tell the people you work with, um, that like, hey, you know, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and
Hmm.
so, you know, these things that you are craving and you miss,
Hmm.
you know, you'll get them back soon. We just need to hold on for a while longer, you know.
Yeah.
So kind of where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, like as people start to get vaccinated, as we start to move to where I was listening to the news this morning, and it's like deaths and infections are trending downward, which I think is like the first real time in a long time. So I think that's really positive to hang on to. I've had a patient who they are of college age and they're getting ready to return to school in the fall, and to me, like I fully expect that they'll be in school in some way, shape, or form in a better capacity than they are now, which I think is really positive. I think thankfully, our like two young generations of millennials and Gen Z or whatever they're called at this point, like I think the very good and positive thing is that we're a lot more emotionally aware and like open to the idea of like having therapists and support. Like I get, videos sent to me on social media all the time from my sister or like family that have to do with like therapists and therapy, and just making jokes of like stuff I say to my therapist, or like I can't get back with you. I already told my therapist we broke up, like things like that. But just like really like incorporating it into like daily life, I think is so
Yeah.
positive. And like, I think we're moving in a direction where, we might hit that like normalization where people feel like seeing a therapist as part of their normal healthcare routine is like totally normal. And I'm very hopeful in that. My hope is that things continue to trend in the right direction to where people can, get back to school. And I know in Oregon, people are, certain have been approved. And I have a cousin who goes to the same small university I went to here. And, she's on the softball team and she got to play in a few games this weekend. So that's positive, with the right precautions. So I think we're trending in the right direction. I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just, people and whether it's older adults like us taking responsibility of like, okay, what can I do to make my situation better, or it's parents and caregivers deciding like, okay, what can I do to make things better for my child or for my family members. But I think we're getting there, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
You know, one thing I want to highlight that we talked about in this podcast, is you actually gave some pretty easy to do, clear steps on how to kind of make, you know, someone's mental health in your household or in your
Yeah.
circle of influence better. You know, make
Mhm.
sure, you know, I mean, you pretty much laid it out actually. You know, make sure you have a good sleeping schedule. You know, good
Mhm.
sleep routine. Make sure you're eating right. Make sure you're getting some exercise, going outside. You know, getting your vitamin D and all this. And one thing I'll kind of throw in there, and I got this from my last podcast, from my brother,
Yeah.
is parent your phone, parent your social media,
Yeah.
and because that's one thing we haven't even
Yeah.
brought up at all is
Yeah.
is how toxic social media is for someone's mental health.
Yeah. Oh
It's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
it's you're getting like someone the like I don't know, like especially like something like Instagram, right? I saw an analogy or like a someone breaking it down the other day where like for a long time people on Instagram got recognition for posting perfect pictures and perfect snapshots of their life when in reality that probably wasn't always true. People on something like TikTok now are getting recognition for being real and honest. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really I mean, there's still, you know, on any social media, there's still like that like kind of fake snapshot that we're seeing a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, social media gives us, it paints a picture for a lot of people, especially who are like self-isolating and not around other people. It paints a picture that like, wow, look at how crappy my life is compared to
Yeah.
these other people.
Yeah. You know, once you start comparing yourself to the lives you see on, Instagram or Twitter, well, from my experience, Twitter is a little bit more raw and real
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
Instagram. But
Hmm.
Instagram, weirdly enough, I think that Instagram's like my favorite social media app to be on. Um,
Yeah.
Second is TikTok, actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Instagram is like it's like taking a COVID test. It's a snapshot in a certain time, but the thing is like you get to pick when your
Yeah.
snapshot is, and then
Hmm.
after you take the photo, you get to go and edit. Make your skin look perfect, and you get to
Yeah.
Facetune your face, and remove that double chin, remove the gut, and you know uh, and all that, and you get to make yourself. So you get to pick, you know, what perfect snapshot of time you want, and then you get to
Yeah.
go in and make yourself look even more perfect, and that's what you're displaying to the world.
Yeah.
And then, me sitting at home on my couch watching The Office for the 20th time in a row, I look and I'm like, wow, this person, last week they were, at some hotel or whatever doing something, and now they're at the beach, and I'm still here sitting on my couch watching The
Same
Office.
season. Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why isn't my life as fun as their life?
Yeah.
And that can lead to some real issues. But
Hmm.
I think what hit me the hardest is just Facebook. Facebook, I cannot stand Facebook. I absolutely hate it. It's
Yeah.
kind of a necessary evil for me.
Hmm.
I one of the companies I own is a media production company, and
Hmm.
one thing that I offer is social media consulting,
Hmm.
especially for like politicians and stuff who are like running for office. It's like how to utilize Facebook as a campaign tool. And
Yeah.
so, it's kind of necessary for me to be on Facebook and be up to date with everything. And it's like I have multiple pages that I manage on
Hmm.
Facebook, and it can be a very good tool. I mean, we connected
Yeah.
on Facebook, me and you, and
Yeah.
and now you're on my podcast, and
Yeah.
this is a great podcast so far. And
Mhm.
but you know and we could talk for hours on just on Facebook, but you build your
Yeah.
echo chambers on Facebook that are completely
Hmm.
toxic. You get the keyboard warriors who feel so brave, just like egging you on and calling you out
Hmm.
online, when you
Yeah.
know for a fact they would never do that in person.
Hmm.
And you just get all this negativity on Facebook, and it I had to take multiple breaks over the COVID season. This
Yeah.
past like 12 months, I've had to take multiple breaks off Facebook, and like have my assistant or someone else run the pages that I run, just because I'm just like, I can't handle this. I'm
Too much
angry all the
sometimes.
time. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just angry all the time. And now I feel like it's manageable for two reasons. One, I don't scroll. I don't read
That's good.
statuses. I
That's
try
good.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
try not to
That's a huge
post.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't scroll. I try not to post on my personal Facebook, because
Mm.
one thing that happens on my posts is I'll post something, and then someone will be like, "Right on," and then the next person will be like, "You're the worst. You're Satan." All this stuff, and then it's like, I'll post up just it's something mildly political, like, oh, it's a real shame, Texas should really fix their power grid. And then
Yeah.
someone will be like, oh, so you're saying the people of Texas deserve to be in ice? And I'm like, what? No, that's
No.
not what I'm saying at all. Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
um so that's a real thing that actually happened to me.
Um,
um
I'm not surprised from the things I've seen on Facebook.
Man, no. Well, we're friends on Facebook now, so whenever I
Yeah.
post something, just keep it if you can handle it. Keep an eye on the
Sounds good.
comments.
I can
Um,
do that.
some people literally comment on my statuses with a gif of Michael Jackson eating popcorn because they're literally just there for the show.
Something's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, and by that time that it gets insane, I've already removed myself from the conversation, and it's just like Facebook friends I have screaming at each other on my posts, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
what happened? I've had to delete a
Yeah.
few posts before just because
Yeah.
I'm just like, this cannot go on. Like, I have to shut this down now.
Yeah, it gets so
Um,
toxic for sure on Facebook.
Yeah, so going back to my original point, it's like my brother said something on my podcast. He's like, parent your phone. He's like, if you have kids, you put them to sleep, at 7 in a separate room, and then you have your time away from your kids because they're sleeping, and then maybe you stay up till 10, and that last few hours, it's like it's important that they go and sleep. It's like turn off your phone every now and then.
Yeah.
Don't sleep with it right next to you. It's like I have my phone right next to me right here, but like spend time away from your phone.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps your because we're all mildly addicted to our smartphones.
100%.
And yeah, completely. And it helps, and if I read something, and let me know if you've heard this too from your studies. The first hour when you wake up is mentally crucial for your whole day, so it kind of like sets the tone of your whole day. I read something about this when I was doing research for a sociology class I was in. So if you wake up and the first thing you do is you grab your phone, you open up Twitter, and you see an article that just pisses you off, like it actually affects your brain, and like chemically, not just like your mood, but like chemically affects you, and then you're almost destined to have like a really bad day that day.
Yeah.
Or if not a
I
bad day,
believe
then
it.
something, a day that's just not great.
I believe it. If you, like you said, if you hop out, like you wake up, you turn off the alarm, you open your phone, you see, an article on just like, for example, what happened in Texas, and like seeing like arguments going back and forth on like why it's this person's fault or why it's these people's fault. And then you're just like, now you're upset. It's going to take a little bit to get out of that, or it's going to be pretty easy for you to stay in that mindset and just kind of continue going down that way.
Yeah, that's like a big problem. I feel like
Yeah.
because I think one of the worst things that happened to the smartphone was it becoming your alarm clock, because it's always
Yeah.
on and it's always
Mhm.
right next to you. So it's
Mhm.
the last thing you see before you go to sleep, and it's the first thing you see when you wake up.
Yeah.
And I actually I bought an alarm clock after my last
That's smart.
podcast.
Yeah.
And my phone is usually in airplane mode or it's off. And so and sometimes it's in airplane mode because I work all the time, I have a hard time turning it off.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that if I go to sleep listening to music, it helps me, instead of focusing on all the 800 things that happened throughout the day and thinking about the 800 things that are going to happen the next day, it helps
Mhm.
my mind focus on one thing, and that's the song I'm listening to, and it helps me get to sleep a lot faster.
Yeah.
So if I listen to music, I put my phone into airplane mode, so it can't ring, I can't access the internet, I can't go on I can't open up Instagram, and it takes itself out of airplane mode in the morning. And usually I like to sleep as long as I can before getting up, and so I don't have time in the morning to check my phone and all that. It's like my phone stays on the desk next to me until I head out the door, and then I grab it, put it in my pocket, and then I go to work. Normally, the first time I open my phone, it's like 30 minutes after getting to work, and so
Yeah.
the mornings are not too bad for me. It was the nights, I would stay
Yeah.
up for a couple
Oh,
hours
yeah.
extra just
Just
scrolling on Twitter. And,
Yeah.
well,
It's easy to get
especially.
caught in that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, especially because, and this is kind of something I wanted to touch on a little bit. Dating has gone all virtual.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the dating apps have been there, but now it's like they're essential for dating.
Yeah.
And so it is so easy and I'm not going to confirm nor deny that I know this by experience, but it is so easy to just spend hours scrolling and swiping before you go to sleep. It is
Yeah.
so easy. Again, I'm not confirming nor denying whether I know that from experience or not.
So I've heard that it's easy to do that.
Yeah. But man, what it like do you have any thoughts on like virtual dating? Like me personally, well, partly I hate it, but
Hmm.
partly I love it because um like I I don't know if how long you've been with your other, but
Mhm.
have you ever gone on the first date and then towards the end of the date you realize there's not going to be another date? Like you're just like not feeling it, or you can tell
Uh-huh.
they're not feeling it,
Yeah.
and then you look and you've already spent like $120 on this night. You took her out to dinner, you saw a movie, you went and got a
Mhm.
couple drinks or something, and then you have that crappy feeling of just like, I don't want another date, but I'm already financially invested in this one.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just wasted $100. That
Mhm.
doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I
you,
think I've been out of the dating game for a long time now. But I think what I've seen just like on social media, just like with like friends of mine, is that it like you mentioned, it cuts out some of the like beginning process of like having to go somewhere and meet up and having to decide like if this is something you want to continue in person. Like now you can just do that from the comfort of your home and like you can kind of just pick and choose, or like things end up being extended a little more, like these relationships or just these yeah, these relationships you've developed with each other, they end up kind of continue a little longer because like there's no need to go meet in person or be together in person. You can kind of just continue it, on this online virtual basis. Like you said, I mean, these apps have been here for a long time, but this is just now, even more than they already had before. They have so much more use for a lot of people because like I am not leaving my house, nothing is open anyway. I'm just going to use this, as a filler for now because this is really all there. And everyone for the most part is in the same boat. It's not just one person being like, I just can't leave the house.
yeah.
It's millions and millions and all these people in the same boat.
Well, it should be millions and millions of people all in the same boat. A
Good
lot of
point.
people are leaving their house anyway.
Good point. Good point.
It should be.
Yeah.
um, but man, yeah, I can't even tell you how many people I see. Like, to me, there are like three levels of breaking COVID restrictions.
Mhm.
There's you have your one friend that you hang out with
Yeah.
to keep yourself mentally sane, and I know that's against COVID guidelines, but I personally don't see a problem with that.
Mhm.
Especially if you're both safe. Like sometimes I hang out with my friend, but he's my coworker. I see
Mhm.
him anyway. Um, and so sometimes me and him hang out. Sometimes he helps me with videos, and me and him are both actually tested quite often,
Yeah.
and are able to self isolate if needed. And then you have a few friends that you hang out with,
Yeah.
um, and you're kind of skirting the line there because like it's kind of like your pod, and so you don't hang out with people outside the pod. You just have your friends that you hang out with, and then you have the people who just do not care. You have the people who are going out,
Yeah.
they're hanging out with who knows what.
Traveling.
Yeah, they're traveling, they're they're dating, but they're actually just first date meeting up with the person, just met them for the first time, probably haven't even talked to them for more than a day, and
Yeah.
they're meeting up and all this, and yeah.
Agree.
Y-
It's it's
you know
it's hard to watch sometimes. It's like you
yeah.
feel like you're doing everything you can possible. And like, I mean, for me personally, like I usually in a normal year would travel to and from Milpitas, San Jose area, like, at least 3 times, 4 times a year. But for me, like I haven't been back in Milpitas since December 2019. So it's hard because it's like that's something I would like to do soon, but like to still see other people just kind of like taking it pretty easily and not like fully taking it as seriously as maybe other people are, that can be pretty hard to watch and difficult to just, stay quiet about.
For sure. Well, I've kept you on, I think, for like an hour and a half now. So no,
Hasn't felt like it in a good way.
I
It
know,
hasn't felt
right?
like it.
I know, right? This was good. It's so this is my first podcast of 2021, actually.
Oh, dope. Nice.
Yeah, and I took a good break because life has been crazy
Yeah.
and I a lot of my podcasts have been political.
Mhm.
And I've had quite a few politicians on here, which I love. I love having politicians on here. I love picking a good politician's brain. But I'm like, I want to start off the year with something a little different. Something that people can listen to and enjoy, but also get something out of it. They can maybe a few people watching, they take a few tips from what you said on how to improve their own mental health.
It'd be dope.
And
Yeah.
maybe this podcast is going to benefit someone's life in a positive way. And that's I think with 2021 being kind of the year of hope and kind of the light at the end of the tunnel here with all this COVID stuff. This is how I wanted to start it off, and I'm pretty glad for it. So thank you so
I'm
much for
honored. That's
being
dope.
thank you so much for being on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Of course.
I would say later on this year, when things start to open up again, schools open up again and stuff, let's have another podcast and kind of talk about if you've seen improvements in certain
love
things
to.
or the changes
Yeah.
that you've seen. And stay safe, stay healthy,
Appreciate it.
and when you do come back to the Bay Area, hopefully things are better and open and all that. Let's grab a beer or coffee or something. Let's hang
make
out.
that happen. Yes, I would love to.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know whenever you come back to the Bay.
Oh, sounds good.
All right, man.
Appreciate you, Tim.
Thank you so much. Till next time.